I am super, super excited to introduce our next guest to you. He doesn't really know it, but he's kind of become one of my favorite people. So we've never met in person, but through our emails, through our interaction with each other while I was lining up my very first summit, Jeffrey Gurian has been so supported on his just conversing back with me, giving me ideas very gently, kind of helping to guide me. He's been a part of these things so often in his life. He has experience with that. I'm going to take just a moment. Jeffrey, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Tressen, and it's so nice to be on with you. Thank you so much for having me. Really,
I'm so excited. I'm so happy. So give me just a moment. I'd like to read your introduction so that I don't miss anything, because you have done so many amazing things in your life, and I cannot wait to hear about it. So Dr. Jeffrey Gurian is one of the only doctors and motivational speakers with a long-standing career in comedy, having worked with some of the biggest comedy stars in the business, from Rodney Dangerfield and Joan Rivers to Gilbert Gottfried and Andrew Dice Clay, to Nick Kroll and John Mulaney. He spent 20 years on the board of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy, and 12 years as a clinical professor at NYU in oral medicine and oral fascial pain, and has lectured at several energy psychology conferences, as well as many online conferences having to do with happiness, mindset, and changing negative thinking into positive thinking. He's also a best-selling author with 8 books, 5 on comedy and 3 on happiness, and developed a cure for stuttering, which he used to cure himself, and now, as an avocation, works with stutterers all over the world. So, Jeffrey, welcome to the From Worry from Wealth Summit. It's so cool to have you here. Look at your smile. You're just awesome. I feel like I've hugged you in my mind 1,000 times through this process. So thank you for being so gracious and kind. And if you would, I'm going to kind of just let you go, because your topic today is don't believe your thoughts, how invalid negative thoughts keep us from achieving success in our goals. But if you wouldn't mind, start from some of your own story and how you got to where you are now. I would love to hear about your journey first, if you wouldn't mind.
I wouldn't mind at all. And thank you. I need to start by commending you, Tressen, because people have no idea how hard it is to create a summit and to put such wonderful speakers together and bring a positive message, because people are so much in need of that. After the last 3 years of what we've been through, we've all been through so much stress. And so I really need to commend you for going out of your way. It's a very, very difficult thing to put even a couple of people together, and you've assembled such a wonderful group of people with positive messages to bring. And so I just need to say that before I start.
Thank you so much.
I thank you for including me as one of them. You mentioned supposedly a lot of things that I've accomplished, but my thoughts, my talk is called Don't Believe Your Thoughts, because my thoughts told me that I'd never accomplish anything. And I'm not even sure where they came from, but I talk a lot about heart wounds. From the time we're children, we accumulate what I call heart wounds to our heart chakra. Every time someone hurts your feelings or breaks a promise to you or hurts you in some way, insults you, breaks up with you in a relationship, we carry that inside of us in our heart chakra, and I call them heart wounds. And they affect our self-esteem and our self-confidence. And they affect every decision that we make in our lives, because every time you're called upon to make a decision, you think about what to do. You use your thoughts, because who else's thoughts can you use, right? So you use your own thoughts. And interestingly enough, your thoughts are not based on your experience. Your thoughts are based on your interpretation of your experience, which is the reason why you can have siblings growing up in the same household that are completely different people. And if you ask them about their childhood, you'd think they had different parents.
Right.
Because their interpretation of what they went through is so different. And most of us are more sensitive than we like to admit. And I always love to talk about sensitivity, especially as a man, because men tend not to want to be in touch with their feelings. They tend to think that sensitivity is a weakness. Now, I have no choice. I happen to be an empath, and I didn't know that as a child. So childhood was very difficult for me because as an empath, I feel more than I want to feel. There was a time in my life, if I was with you and you were sad, I was sadder for you than you were. I overfelt my feelings. I'm like an antenna for feelings, which helped me a lot in my work with people, working in the clinic, working in practice. As you said, I spent 20 years on the board of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy, 12 years at NYU in oral medicine and orofacial pain, where I was working on the physical symptoms of stress, mostly migraine headaches, that tend to affect women more than men, interestingly enough. And that's something that I speak about a lot also, because our society often tells women that they're too sensitive, when being sensitive is a great strength. It's not a weakness. And if the world was more sensitive, it would be a kinder place. Mm-hmm. So I came from a very loving and supportive family. And I don't know where this came from, but for some reason, I grew up with a lot of fears and a lot of negative thoughts about myself. I thought I would never be successful at anything. And I remember thinking, that I would never have a profession, that I would never have a family, I would never be married, I would never have children. I don't know where I got all those thoughts from. And I developed a stuttering problem when I was about 6 or 7 years old. I started stuttering, and it was very bad. And it went through my 20s and even beyond into my 30s. After I became a doctor, I was still blocking on certain words. And for some reason, I've always been able to confront fear. I've been battling fear since a child. It started with fears of the dark, and I made myself go in the dark, as scared as I was, because I knew that it wasn't real, and I knew I had to fight the fear. And which led to actually one of my books is called Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. So I've been battling fear all my life. When I got to college, I was only 16 when I went to college. I had skipped a couple of grades, and I was supposedly popular, but I didn't know it. When I went to high school, they had that stupid thing where, in the yearbook, they vote, the prettiest girl, the handsomest guy, the best athlete, and stuff like that. So I was voted most talented because I played the piano and the drums. It was basically, a popularity contest. And so I win this thing, but again, I don't feel part of. I'm stuttering. I feel different than everybody. I don't feel good inside. But when I get to college, I make myself run for the president of the freshman class. And it was a huge college. 7 different high schools fit in, and I only knew kids from my high school. And I told myself, if I could win the election, I wouldn't have to stutter anymore, because I had a feeling it had to do with how I felt about myself. And it was a great lesson for me. I couldn't say Gurian. I could never say Jeffrey Gurian. When I introduce myself now to people, I never just say Jeffrey. I always say Jeffrey Gurian, because I could never say my last name. Most stutterers can't say their own name. And my feeling is that because your name is your identity, and if there's something about yourself that you're not comfortable with, you can't present yourself to other people. So I had to have kids, other kids that I knew, introduce me to kids I didn't know and say, hey, this is Jeffrey Gurian, he's running for president. And, I won the election. I was the president of the freshman class of Hunter College. And I still stuttered. And it was a great lesson for me. It was one of my very early lessons. And it told me that outside validation in life doesn't work.
Right.
Doesn't matter how many people tell you that you're fantastic and wonderful and talented. It matters what you think of yourself. And that started me on a journey of self-introspection, of taking my mind apart, because I realized one day that I didn't stutter when I was alone. I only
Ah,
stuttered, and that's true for many stutterers. They can speak much better when they're alone, but when they're trying to speak to other people, that's when they have a problem. And I was given the grace, I consider it grace, to figure out that you can't have a disability based on your location, right?
right?
If a person has a true disability, it's there all the time. A man with a limp can't go into a room alone and walk perfectly. But if I could,
Right?
right, but if I could speak better when I'm alone, then theoretically it means there's nothing wrong with me.
That's brilliant.
And so I decided to work on myself. I made myself a promise that I couldn't go through my whole life as a stutterer, because I knew I wanted to be a doctor, and no one looks at a stutterer as a calm, confident person. Whether you are or not, that's not the image, that's not the energy that you put off when you're stuttering. So I was determined to cure myself. And I worked for many years. And that's when I realized, don't believe your thoughts, that I was holding
Yes.
thoughts that were not valid for me. And I would venture that every single person, people who are listening to this, people who will hear it in the future, people you know, everybody are holding thoughts that are not valid for them. And very often, there were thoughts that were given to us by people who did not have our best interests at heart.
Yes.
Sometimes it was our parents, sometimes it was siblings, sometimes it was strange kids that bullied you when you were a kid, because for some reason, children have a mean streak, and they like to pick on a child who they feel doesn't fit in and make their lives very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Even when you don't want to believe the negative things that some people say about you, on some level, we hold on to those thoughts. You know, every one of us can remember happy things in our lives, but interestingly enough, the traumatic events are embedded more deeply into your consciousness than the happy events.
Right.
So that silly statement they teach us when we're kids, you know, sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never harm you, is the furthest from the truth, because all the bruises you got as a child healed up a long time ago. But every single one of us can remember something that someone said to us that hurt our feelings,
Yes.
like it was yesterday, like it was
Yes.
yesterday. And you know, it doesn't only happen from childhood. In my own example, when I went to dental school, I had the most horrible experience. I was looking forward to it. When I was 12 years old, I decided what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a doctor. I knew that. But I knew I was too sensitive to handle life and death.
Mm.
I was wearing braces, and I'm like, you know what? I'll be a dentist and I'll make people look beautiful. And I was already writing comedy at 12 years old. And it's very odd to choose what you want to do when you're 12, but I never changed my mind. Those
Right.
two things were always part of what I did. So when I went to dental school, I went to school in Philadelphia. And I'll make this story short, but it's a powerful story for me. I was abused from day one. The first day of school, the dean made a speech, and he said, we don't want any free thinkers here. If you want to be a hippie with a guitar, go to dental school in California. And from that moment on, they made my life miserable. And I'm going to show you a picture of me in dental school. I grew a mustache because that was a popular thing in New York at the time.
Let's see it.
This is how I looked. If you can see, that's how short my hair was. I had a mustache.
Yes.
And I was banned from school. I was not allowed to see patients for 3 weeks by an instructor who had a Confederate flag in his office and a sign that said, "The South will rise again." And he had a buzz cut. He was an ex-Marine. But I think he must have been in the Nazi army, not in our army. And he banned me from school along with another one of the instructors. They were the most two powerful instructors, and they wouldn't let me come into clinic for 3 weeks. Now, in professional school, if you miss even a couple of days, that's a real challenge. When you're not allowed to see patients for 3 weeks, you're in danger of not graduating. And they wanted me to drop out on the basis of my appearance. They told me, I had an advisor who took me out in the hall one day and told me that I was a disgrace to the profession, just because they didn't like my hair and a mustache. It's so bizarre. These days, it would make no sense, but they literally tortured me on a daily basis. And to to the day I got my diploma. My parents said to me, you know, I used to call them in tears. I couldn't take the stress of being humiliated on a daily basis. When you learn to give injections, you have to do it on a patient. So my focus was always to work painlessly. I never wanted to hurt anybody. And I had a needle in the person's gum, and an instructor came by and hit my arm like this and said, put it in further. Today, that would be considered assault. That would never be allowed. But that's what happened. So all these years later, when I graduated, not only was I not a disgrace, I graduated at the top half of my class. I was 54 out of 126, because I said to my parents, I'll never let them get the best of me. No one will ever do that to me. I will always achieve my goals. And so decades pass. And I just before the pandemic, I get an email one day, and I left the school and I never had anything to do with them. That talk about heart wounds. They diminished me. They took away my self-esteem. It took me years to build up the confidence, because in order to be a cosmetic dentist, you have to be very confident. You're filing down people's front teeth. You better know what you're doing.
Right.
I was excellent in my work, but those heart wounds burdened me tremendously. Decades pass, and just before the pandemic, I get an email one day that the dean of the school now would like to come to New York to meet with me. And my first thought was, I want nothing to do with them. I don't want to see these people. What am I going to say? But then I remembered how I confront fear and uncomfortability. And I turned it around and I said, you know what? I am going to meet with him, and I'm going to tell him my story. I'm going to tell him what they did to me and why I would never donate 1 cent to the school, because they damaged me. That lasted many, many years. So he brought another dean with him, and I started to tell him the story. And as I started, he interrupted me and he said to me, I want you to know they were racist and anti-Semites in those days. And I said to him, you know, I'm so grateful that you said that I didn't have to say that. That was always a feeling of mine. He said, we would never allow that in the school. He's been the dean for 10 years. He said, I changed the environment of the school completely. And at the end of the meal, he said to me, can I give you a hug? And I said, I said, absolutely. And I have a picture of me with these 2 deans, one on either side of me. You wouldn't even think that we ever knew each other, because everyone thinks I'm in the music business, not as a doctor or in the comedy world. There was actually a recent article in the New York Post. Keith Richards and Billy Joel and one other very famous musician came over to my table to greet me. They had never met me before, but they said, "How we haven't seen you in a long time," because everyone thinks I'm in the music business, so they must have thought that they knew me. And the New York Post did a whole story on me. But needless to say, so now I'm friends. That dean invited me to speak. I gave a series of weekly lectures to the doctors at that university he said, I want you to talk about changing frustration to enjoyable and hate to love. That's what I lectured on. And he said to me, can you ever believe that the dean of that school that tortured you would be your friend now? I said, in a million years, I could never believe that. Yeah. And so it's a story to tell you that, first of all, that you can't label things in your life. Everyone has a path. I write a lot about spiritual things, and I like to talk about the difference between spirituality and religion very quickly, because it's confusing to some people. Religion can be wonderful for people, but it tends to divide us because it puts you in a category, and people not in your religion are automatically outside your category. Spirituality brings the whole world together, because all it asks is that you believe in a force greater than yourself.
Yes.
If you think that you're controlling everything in your life, then you tend to blame yourself when things don't go the way you would like them to. And I don't say when things go wrong, it's when things don't go the way you would like them to.
Yes.
Very often people look at themselves as the ultimate victim of the universe. They're like, well, everything works out easy for other people, but when I try to do it, it doesn't work out for me, you know? And they own that. They label that negative energy. And what I've learned is that you can't say things like that. If I don't get something that I want, I've learned to think, well, it's not because I'm being punished, it's because I'm supposed to have something better than that. And I don't have the foresight to see what that is. The universe has a plan for me. And this helped me. Oh boy, it helped me get through a widowmaker heart attack. It helped me get through a hospitalization with COVID, double pneumonia. You know, in March of 2020, when COVID came out, I got it right away. As you can tell, I'm a trendsetter. I don't want to wait. I went right out. I went right out and got COVID. The day they declared it a pandemic, on March 11th, that's the day I got sick. And on March 26th, an ambulance took me to the hospital.
Wow.
You know, when they wheeled me into that emergency room, you know, I had been afraid to go. They were warning people not to go to the hospital, especially if you had a heart condition or anything like that. You're in a high risk category because the virus was very new and nobody knew anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
They wheeled me into the emergency room and they put me into a cubicle next to a woman who was screaming, literally screaming with every breath that she took. And the natural thought is, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why, of all places, you put me in here? They couldn't move me because there was no room. In New York City, they ran out of hospital rooms. They were putting people in the hallways. And I had to shift my thinking to do what I write about in my books. As opposed to thinking about myself, instead of saying, why me? The answer is, why not me? Whoever promised me that my life is supposed to be perfect, that this is not supposed to happen to me? So I had to understand, this is my path. Whether I like it or not, this is my path. You can't only choose the wonderful things that happen in life and say, oh, this is my path. This is great. It's when things feel like nothing is going right in your life. That's when it's really important to believe in these certain spiritual principles. So what I had to do is I had to step outside myself, as sick as I was. And they were almost going to send me home until they x-rayed my lungs, and a pulmonary specialist came and he said to me, I'm sorry to tell you, you have COVID double pneumonia and we're going to find a room for you.
Wow.
They emptied a cancer ward to start a COVID ward. But what I had to do, I had to start thinking about this woman. I had to step outside myself and think about how much pain she must be in, or how scared she must be to be in a state where she was literally screaming with every breath. And that took me outside myself. And it's a form, you know, we talk about gratitude and service, as many of your speakers have mentioned. And stepping outside yourself is not an easy thing to do, but it's an important thing to do, because who else can we think about but ourselves? You know what I mean? We think about ourselves all day. Even if you don't think much of yourself, you think of yourself all the time, right?
That's right.
You'd have to be a maniac to only think about somebody else's life. But it's important sometimes to try and step outside, to broaden your horizon and think about what other people are experiencing. And so when I say don't believe your thoughts, there are so many times during the day when our thoughts are not valid, when our thoughts can be very self-centered, when they're leading us in the wrong direction. And it's not an easy thing to examine your thoughts, because if you have any intelligence at all, you tend to believe your thoughts. Right? But like I write, you know, the same way that feelings aren't facts, thoughts are not necessarily facts. And what I've learned is that you can change a thought. You don't have to stick with that thought for your whole life. So I had to, in order to cure myself of stutter, as you can see, I no longer stutter. And since I stopped stuttering, you can't shut me up. I can talk at length for hours, you know, because I'm so glad I listen to my voice. When I work with stutterers, and I work with stutterers all over the world, and I like to tell people that you can be helped, that message is not getting out there. That people, stuttering institutions are not telling stutterers that they can get better. And the spiritual aspect is that we're all the same. We all have the same number of chromosomes. You have XX, I have XY, you know, but we're all built the same. And I didn't do magic. And if I can conquer stuttering, you can do it as well. That's the essence of spirituality, that we're all the same. We can all do the same things, you know? And so that's a message that I try and carry. And so it led me to writing books, and all those thoughts about things that I would never have. I wound up having all those things. I got married. I have amazing children, and they have children. I'm the G word. It's like, and it's such a blessing. And I thank my ex-wife all the time for my children. I'm very grateful to her. And I talk about that a lot too, about letting go of resentments and things. It's very important to honor certain people in your life. And she gave me these amazing children who wouldn't be them if it wasn't for her. And so I've learned also, not everyone is meant to be in your life forever. Some people are meant to be in your life for a certain amount of time in order to accomplish certain things. So in my case, when I thought that I would never accomplish any of these things, I wound up with a big comedy career. As an example, one of my 5 books on comedy, I wrote a book with Chris Rock called Make 'Em Laugh.
I love it.
It's about the history of a very famous comedy club in New York City where Eddie Murphy started, and Jerry Seinfeld and Billy Crystal. They're all in this book. They all sat with me and told me their stories. And then after I recovered from COVID, I said, you know what? I'm so grateful, because as your other speaker said, very often we're given obstacles in life to overcome. And some people are crushed by them. And other people find this inner strength that they don't even know they have sometimes, and they rise above it, and they're able to conquer these obstacles. And the purpose is so that you can go out and help other people. You become an inspiration to other people. And so my first happiness book was called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness.
I love the cover. It's so good.
Do you have any idea how hard it is to get a dog to sit in lotus position? It's almost impossible, But so it's got over 280, mostly 5-star reviews. People talk about it as being life-changing. It's the first time that I opened up about my life. I tend to be closed very often in the past, but I realized it's important to share. I work with a lot of people in 12-step programs, and the essence of 12-step programs, they're very powerful spiritual programs. You talk to people you never met, you share intimate details of your life, and they identify with it. They don't know your last name, you don't tell them where you live, what you do, but you're willing to share courageously about your own life, and people identify because there's only so many things a human being can experience. We have different names, we have different family members, we're all unique to a degree, but we're also all the same to a degree. And if I tell you stuff that happened to me, you might nod your head that you experienced the same thing. And very often there are painful events in life, and those are the things that cause the heart wounds. And those are the things that we need to release in order to lead happy and prosperous lives. And so the topic that you have is, worry to wealth. There's no guarantee that you're going to always get wealth, but you're going to be a lot wealthier emotionally than you were before. When I was on the board of the Association for Spirituality, I approached them with my work because when I was at NYU, I was taking away headaches from people just using the energy from my hands. I've been doing that all my life. And if you just walked to a university and told them you take headaches away with your hands, they'll probably call the police, because it sounds like a weird thing to do. But they saw me in the clinic for 12 years doing that for people, because we all have the ability to heal each other. On the simplest level, if you've ever been upset and someone you trust or care about gives you a hug and you feel better afterwards, it's because they allowed you to transfer positive energy to them.
Yes.
That's why when that dean asked if he could hug me, I'm saying absolutely, because in spiritual circles, that's what people do. They hug each other because it grounds you and it reaffirms you. And sensitive people need to be reaffirmed. We tend to doubt ourselves because most of the world is not functioning on that level. Right. And it's not to be judgmental, but it's just the truth that most of the world functions in the lower chakras, and you have to be able to take things to the heart chakra in order to be able to make a change in the world.
Mhm.
So I started writing books on happiness. And after that one, I wrote Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way, because battling fear has been very important to me. So I took it to the extreme. Traveling makes me very nervous. So in 2019, I went to Japan all by myself. It was the scariest thing. It was the scariest thing I can think of to do. I went for 2 weeks. I used the Japanese that I had learned. I studied level 1 Japanese 3 times, and I was lost every day. I have fears of getting lost, but I did it. I conquered the Japanese subway system, which is the most complicated system in the world. And I did it. I went and I spoke to people and I made friends, and I did a 14-hour flight that I never thought I could do. I documented it on video. And
I
then,
love it. Did you do it specifically to show that you could overcome your fear? Was that the intention
yeah,
behind the
yeah.
trip? Yeah.
I do things as a challenge to myself. I tell myself, look, the airports are filled with millions of people who travel. They don't seem to be that nervous. Why should I be? So I need to do things that other people can do comfortably. I need to do them. And if it makes me uncomfortable, that's too bad. I have to do them anyway, because otherwise I would stay in bed with the covers over my head and do nothing.
Yes.
So that led to my third book called Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration. And this book isn't about me. 20 years ago, I started collecting stories of very courageous people who overcame unbelievable difficulties in their lives, things that most people would be crushed by. A little boy, a little 3-year-old boy who was playing hide and seek and put his hands in a tractor and it cut off his hands. And his father happened to be a surgeon, but not that kind of surgeon. And he rushed the little boy to the hospital, and it was a holiday and there was no transplant surgeons around. So the father had to try to do it himself. He assembled a team of people, reattached his little boy's hands, put them in casts for 3 months. When they took off the casts, the hands were alive, but they weren't functional. The grandfather was a martial arts master and trained this little boy every day to use his hands. And today, that little boy is a famous spinal surgeon, and he runs the spinal surgery clinic at a hospital in Colorado.
Oh my gosh.
I can't get over that story. Just blew me away. So I collected a whole book of stories like that, that
Mhm.
kind of powerful stuff. And it's resonating with people because people need inspiration. People
Yes.
doubt themselves, and it's all fear-based. And what I'd like to do, so that we don't run out of time, I have this thing that I carry with me every day on this worn piece of paper, and it's a statement that I got from a book from Marianne Williamson, but I use it in all my work. I had the honor of doing radio with her and Wayne Dyer, and it was something very, very special. But this statement kind of says it all. It's called About Fear. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We were born to manifest the glory within us. It's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. To me, it gives me chills. I carry it, it's all wrinkled because I carry it in my pocket every day, because I believe that you internalize information that you carry with you. And
Yes.
I use it in all my work, especially with stutterers, because I say when you attain fluency, when you cure yourself, you've done something amazing. And now you become an inspiration to other people because you show them that it's possible to overcome something like that. And I just admire people who face all kinds of difficulties and rise above them. And that's what this is about. And that's why I commend you for doing conferences like this. It's so important to put that message out because so many people are struggling. They're
Mhm.
struggling in silence. They're struggling at home alone very often. And they need to hear things like this because you
Right.
do become an inspiration. So, I spoke so long and I didn't even give you a chance to ask me many questions. But if you have something you want to ask, please feel free.
It's okay. I'm so glad that you did, because you covered pretty much everything I would ask you, at least on that. And I thank you so much for putting the thoughtfulness into being here with us today, because it just comes through. It comes through everything that you said. You've thought about it. And I think that your impact in the world, through when you smile, I can see this sense of humor in you, like it's physically in your body. Like, I think that you just have that natural ability. When you smile, your smile is infectious. Your voice, the way that you're speaking with people, and really I can feel your heart, Jeffrey, come through in everything that you're saying. Because when you talk about heart wounds, we all have them on
Mhm.
one level or another. And the beautiful thing that you're sharing with everybody today is that those don't have to be what define your life, and they don't have to define you. And we may feel them on some level for the rest of our lives, but it's what we do with our invalid thoughts about those wounds that can either bring us forward through our life in a positive way, or get us really, really stuck and possibly take us backwards. What you
Mhm.
went through at the college, I can't imagine, because it sounds like you were there for a very long time.
4 years, four
Yeah.
years of trauma, 4 years of constant trauma, being humiliated literally on a daily basis. I had no friends. I had one friend who was married, but that was it. How I got through, I couldn't tell you. I don't know how I did it, but it was because I guess the strength, I was given that grace, the strength of my mind, and now
Mhm.
to lecture at that school, to be asked next month, they want me to come and do a lunch and learn and tell my story to the students. They want them to hear what I went through so they could be grateful for what they have now, because they treat them so nicely. And the students probably don't even appreciate it. And,
Yeah.
so I went, I'm on the cover of this magazine this month. Sutton Place magazine put me on the cover because of the stuff that I do. I get to work with Jerry Seinfeld and people like that, and Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, and happiness is very important. My apartment is filled with balloons and crayons and toys all the time. If you came here, you would think that little children lived here. But it's one of the things that I teach people, to stay connected to your inner child.
Mhm.
When you were a little girl and people came to say, can Tressen come out to play? And it was so exciting. That's not supposed to that's supposed to last. That's not supposed to end just because we grow up and we do serious stuff. You're still supposed to have fun and hold on to that childlike part of you that is alive inside of you.
I
And
love it.
that child needs a big hug. And my inner child is my best friend. That's what it said in the article, that I stay
Yes.
in touch with my inner child. So when I see my grandchildren, they love to come here because I'm filled with toys. But it's for me, basically. It's for me, you know. I
Well, I want to point out in the chat, we've got some really nice, just people have really enjoyed your time with us. Cameron said that it was really awesome and that there were really great speakers today, but this has been Cameron's favorite today for sure. And
that's
that Cameron resonates with being a sensitive person with a lot of fear. So it has been really nice. And Samantha said that she just loves all of the sharing of your journey. Thank you so much for your example and story, lifted me up, and I will be buying your books. And I have asked Christy to please put your book links in the chat, and I hope she can get those in there. I think she'll get those in here in just a moment. So, we never know who we're going to connect with and who we're going to have a positive effect on. And I love that Cameron and Samantha were here today to be able to connect with you, because nothing is by accident, Jeffrey. Nothing happens by accident. Your story and telling us about stuttering, and I love the brilliant piece that you said that you realized that you didn't stutter when you were by yourself.
Mhm.
There's a guidance that we have internally, whether it got you through the 4 years or whether it was getting you through the divorce that you had in your life, or being a writer and putting yourself out there, writing something that someone else is going to share with so many people. It's obvious to me that you have an internal compass and an internal voice that helps to guide your mind, and that you have paid attention. I call it consciously creating the life that we want,
Mhm.
because we can go through. I part of why I wanted to create this summit is that I feel strongly that a lot of people are going through their life on autopilot,
Yep. Mhm.
and we are susceptible, way more susceptible, when we're not actually choosing. Like if I walked up to someone and say, hey, what legacy do you want to live or leave behind? What are your intentions for the day? What do how are you doing in the areas of your life? Some people haven't even thought that we have, intellectual, spiritual, physical, we have this beautiful tapestry of well-rounded things in our life, and we can enjoy every single one of them, even though we're being challenged through the way, because with that mindset that you're going to be okay, and you can talk to that invalid part of yourself, the ego, and those negative thoughts, you can do anything. And you can, look at where you are now. You've got this amazing grin. You've got these grandkids that you need to enjoy. You get to surround yourself with fun and enjoyment and people. And now it's coming all full circle, where you're being invited back to the school that was one of your biggest hardships in life.
Right. It's
So
amazing.
I don't know. I think your story is really cool and very beautiful. And the reason it is because of how you've chosen to navigate it with your own coolness and beauty.
Thank you so much. As I always say, you can't get better with the same mind that got you sick. You need new
Right.
thoughts. We all know our own thoughts. But if our own thoughts are not working for you, then it means that you need new thoughts that you don't own yet. It's like you need new thoughts on your hard drive. And those new thoughts are very often spiritual wisdom, a different way of looking at the world. So one of the quotes that I use is that you can't change your past. The only thing you could change is your perspective of your past. It's how you look at the things that have happened in your life, and how you process them. So again, I'm thrilled to be part of this. And the people that are here are the people that are supposed to be here. You never know how your words affect somebody. Sometimes you say something so simple, but it's something someone else needs to hear.
Yes.
And they hold on to it. That's how you get new thoughts, by hearing people speak and by them saying something that you need to hear. Most things we don't even remember, but every once in a while, somebody will say something that's important for you, and you'll hold on to that thought, and then you can incorporate it into your own thinking. And
Yes.
that's very powerful. Again, that's why I commend you. And I thank you so much for the honor of being part of this today. Very special.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Gretchen says, thank you, Dr. Gurian, for sharing your many gifts. I'm definitely inspired, and long live comedy.
Yeah, we all need to laugh.
I know, we do.
Laughter.
We
I'll
need
tell
to
you this
take
last
things
thing.
lighter.
I'm on the board of this group called Laugh MD, and we bring comedy to people in hospitals and people in recovery, because laughter releases endorphins, and sick people don't get enough contact. Nobody's hugging them, and they're not laughing. And when you can do that, it makes a big change in people. So Laugh MD, you can check it out, but it's a very powerful concept.
So
The people listening to this would benefit most from the last 3 books. Those are my happiness series. The happiness series, it's Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. And the last one is Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration. They're really beautiful stories, not mine, stories of people that have inspired me by what they've been able to overcome.
Jeffrey, I love it so much. Thank you for just being such a bright light in the world and helping people to smile and think differently. You're making a difference, and I appreciate you so much for spending your valuable time with everybody here today.
Thank you. And I thank Samantha and Gretchen for being on camera with us.
Right?
It's so nice to see you, ladies. Yes, thank you very much.
Right?
Your bright smiles helped a lot.
That was so good to connect with him. I just love his energy and his spirit. It's fantastic.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching the Happiness Channel. I really appreciate it. I hope you got something out of it. If you want to see more of our videos, please click on the boxes on either side of me. And don't forget to like, comment, and most important of all, please subscribe. That's what helps us to do more videos. I hope to be doing one a week. And in the meantime, I wish you another week of happiness, and I hope to see you real soon. Thanks.